Um, when last did you lose faith in Nigeria? When last were you tempted to give up on Nigeria? Maybe this morning, maybe now. Somebody said since I was born. Um, I'm here. I'm here today to make an argument or a case for why, against all odds, you should not give up on Nigeria. Why you should not give up hope. I'm not here to downplay or discountenance the many things that cause us to feel disillusioned, but I'm just here to make a few points as to why I think it pays to not give up hope. And you know, that I've used that word hope, optimism, and hope is a powerful thing. Hope does not cost anything, actually. Hope, as a lens through which you see the world, allows you to see opportunities that other people do not see. When you despair, and you stay in a state of despair, often you close your eyes to opportunity. Hope allows you see the problem, but it also allows you to see solutions. And think of any business that you admire today. What is it if not a solution to a problem, for example? So I'm going to give you, there's about 5 points. And you come with me on a journey, and I'll tell you about 5 stories about why I think it's important to focus on some of the positive things that are happening, and how we can use the positivity to inspire ourselves, to build the Nigeria that we actually want, the Nigeria of our dreams. I'm going to speak first about the power of technology. And it's interesting that there was one of the earlier speakers talked about e-voting and the power of technology to change our electoral system. On the 19th of February this year, at the airport in Lagos, international airport in Lagos, a 14-year-old girl, and some of you might have heard this story, who was flying alone, 14-year-old, so a child essentially, was extorted by uniformed airport officials. And they collected 8,000. I mean, that's one of the worst things anybody can do. How do you stop a 14-year-old who's flying by herself, unaccompanied, and and collect money? So her mom goes to Twitter, and what did her mom do? She puts out a tweet, talking about what her daughter has just had to endure. And of course, there was a lot of the tweets went viral, as these things do. Got a lot of attention and a lot of focus. And a month later, there was an announcement that they had actually found the officials who extorted this girl. But what made it possible? CCTV. There was functioning CCTV at the airport. So not only did they find out, in fact, they found out that it was, I think the girl had said it was one person. They found out there was 2 officials of the immigration service that collected this money. So they were able to get the 2 officials, penalize them, get the money back. But that's what technology did. That's what technology does. In the systems that we look up to, that we admire, they come to take things like this for granted. That there will be functioning cameras. Now imagine that there was no functioning camera in that place. It becomes a case of, as a unknown soldier or unknown officials. But for me, that's the power of technology. That's what, and some of these things are, so it's important to know, and I'm saying this as this example because look, a lot of the things that we complain about can actually be solved by technology. But when we need to be aware first, so that we can then start to make the push for this kind of thing. The power of technology. 2 weeks or so after that incident, the National Assembly had a vote on 68 amendments to the Constitution. That's probably the biggest constitutional amendment we've ever had in Nigeria. 68 bills to amend the 1999 Constitution. Among those bills were a number of women empowerment of bills, or bills that were supposed to cater to the needs and the interests of women. Now, the House of Representatives voted against a number of those bills, some of the most important. So, bills 36, 37, and 38, they voted against them. One of those bills, Bill 36, basically was supposed to allow a Nigerian woman to give her citizenship to her foreign husband, because Nigerian men can give their citizenships to their foreign wives. That has always been the case. If you're a Nigerian man, if you are married to a woman who's, I think, German or something, after a certain time, she can qualify to become Nigerian. So if it works for men, why shouldn't it work for women? That seems to make sense, right? But the House voted against it. The Bill 37 was was an affirmative action bill, which basically said 35% of political party positions should be reserved for women. If women make up 50% of the population, why shouldn't there be more women in political party positions? Bill 38 is about indigenship, which basically says that a woman who's been married to a man for 5 years can take on the indigenship of her husband's state and contest for elections in that state. Because how does it make sense that a woman who is, say, from Abia State, gets married to a man from Kogi, moves to Kogi, lives there all her life, and then when it's time to contest for elections, they tell her that she cannot contest in Kogi? It doesn't make sense. Yeah? Now, so these bills were turned down by the House. And you know what followed? Of course, there was a lot of outrage, there was a lot of noise and all that. But there was also a lot of sustained activism and engagement. People, civil society organizations, women organizations, they engaged with the National Assembly. A week later, what happened? The Speaker of the House of Representatives announced that they were reversing themselves on those decisions and that they were going to consider those bills again. And it happened because some people decided to engage, to push, to make noise. The power of activism. In the first 40 years of Nigeria's existence post-independence, we had only 10 years of democracy. That's the first 6 years in 1960 to 66, and then 4 years, 79 to 83. So in the first 40 years, only a quarter of that was democracy. The next 20 years, 100% of that time has been a democracy. You may not think this matters a lot, but it does. It counts for something. And why did it happen? Because some people chose, against all odds, in the darkest times of military rule, some people said we will push for democracy to happen. Today it's here to stay. When it started in 1999, we started off with what you might call a one-party system. One national party, and the smaller parties that kind of just wanted to sort of get a few states and stay, regional parties. Today, we have two, what you might say, equally matched, balanced parties. Now, that for all their flaws, at least give people hope that if one party messes up, we can always give another party a chance, which is not the same as when you assume that it doesn't matter what happens, there's only one party that can always be in power. These things matter. You may not think they do, but they do matter. In the systems we look up to, in the US and the UK, they have at least two evenly matched political parties that swap power. When people get dissatisfied with one party, and these things actually raise the standards of democracy. Now, this has happened because, and that's what I call the power of maturity. When you just keep at it. For those who are political history students, in 1992, the then head of state set up two parties, but they were set up by a decree. We want to have this party and this party. Now, all these years later, we now have two evenly matched parties that nobody needed to set up by a decree. They emerged, they evolved. That's the power of maturing, the power of evolving. The final power that I want to talk about is that of foundations, of laying foundations. You guys know about the telecoms revolution or the licensing of GSM in 2001. All of what we're able to do today, when you talk about the fintech revolution or whatever it is because in 2001 there was licensing of mobile phones. As at the year 2000, there were less than 100,000 phone lines in the whole of Nigeria. Just over 20 years ago. Today, there's a mobile phone in virtually every hand in Nigeria. Now, the power of foundations. You do something today, and it becomes the foundation to build something on. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe in 10 years' time. But it's super important. Again, you may not think these things matter, but I'm here to tell you that they do matter. There was a pension reform in 2004. Today, on the basis of that, there's at least 10 trillion naira of pension assets. Today, anybody who works at the end of their working career is sure that there is a pension waiting for them because of that pension reform. It happened in 2004. It was a policy, it was a law. Today, 20 years later, it has turned into, that is probably the biggest investable pool of funds in Nigeria. You have the Sovereign Wealth Fund from 2011, which is supposed to be a savings and investment fund for Nigeria, for future generations. Again, it may not seem to matter, but if you think of the fact that Norway, which has oil, just like us, Norway's own sovereign wealth fund actually is able to deliver more than enough money to fund more than half of the Swedish budget annually. Norway's fund allows them to completely ignore oil. That's the possibility. That is what is possible in Nigeria. This fund was established in 2012, 2013. And I can go on and on. You know, you have the PIB, the Petroleum Industry Bill. That's more 2021. You know, again, these things, because they are policy, a lot of people don't pay attention to them. But these are the foundations on which change is built. These are the foundations on which fortunes are built. When the GSM revolution was happening in 2001, I mean, I guess many of you maybe, I was in university at the time, and I remember that the first phone lines that I bought at that time, the SIM and the phone was like 16,000 or something, or 18,000 at that time. It was a lot of money. You know, and of course, some people complain, oh, this thing, what kind of thing is this? It's too expensive, it's too this, it's too that. But that has become the foundation of multi-billion-dollar ideas and businesses. So on that note, I want to move us to a call for action. Now that you know this, now that you know that change does happen, now that you know that it's important to focus on some of these things that matter, what should you be doing? What should you be doing? Number one, you should know that your voice matters. You are not inconsequential. One mother somewhere put out a tweet about how her daughter was extorted. And I can tell you that that space, that airport space will never be the same again. You are not inconsequential. Your voice counts. Whatever we think of as major change today is because one person decided somewhere that, okay, enough is enough. One person decided somewhere that against all odds, this will happen. Your voice matters. Two, do your best to understand Nigeria, understand the country in which you live. Pay attention to stuff. How many people have attended a political ward meeting, for example, before? A ward meeting. How many people have been to the State House of Assembly to see what happens there? How many people have a PVC? You have to get Get yourself involved. Get yourself involved in this thing. Get a PVC, attend a ward meeting, do something. Put your money where your mouth is. Support something, no matter how small. Support an initiative. If somebody you know is contesting for office and you believe in them and their idea, give them put 1,000 naira into their campaign fund. It matters. But sitting back in despair and thinking that Nigeria is not working anyway, it doesn't do anything. There's nothing to gain from that. Instead, you can acknowledge that it's not working, and at the same time, acknowledge that it can work and put in the effort. And then, of course, in terms of doing, the final thing that I want to say is that, for some people here, you want to leave Nigeria. And I actually say that, I tell people, if you think that you need to jackpot, please go ahead and do it. Absolutely. Because, no. It seems like it's a contradiction of what I'm saying. But my point is that, for some people, you may need to leave Nigeria to appreciate Nigeria. For some people, the next phase of your life, of what you need to learn, may be outside. But what you must never do is burn your bridges when you go. What you must never ever do, and an advice, is to burn your bridges when you are leaving Nigeria. Keep your language, keep your network, keep your passport. In the world in which we are going into, people who are, who are hyphenated have an edge. When they say Canadian Nigerian or Canadian, but don't burn your bridges. There are a lot of people who are going will come back as well. Because sometimes, as I said, you need to go to see the opportunity that exists here. There are people who have gone, there's a commissioner in Bayelsa State who was an Olympian in Nigeria, who went to Canada, lived there for many years, came back home. Boxing, actually the boxing coach, Olympic boxing coach, and amongst other things. So it's important. So don't let anybody guilt trip you into saying, "Oh, if you love Nigeria, you have to be here." Or it's part of loving Nigeria. Also, sometimes means being able to go away. But what you shouldn't do is to burn your bridges. On that note, I hope that I've been able to convince you, to some extent, that there is value actually in believing in Nigeria, because a hopeful mind sees opportunity. A closed mind or a despairing mind is closed and sees no future and no opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much.